If a child grows up in luxury, does that automatically mean that they will end up being someone that is an ingrate?
Alhamdulillah wa salatu salam ala rasulillah ma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and welcome back to Beyond the Mimbar, our inshallah weekly podcast, inshallah, that we'll be discussing different things, different topics relating to the viewers, of course, and giving the Islamic perspective about those actual topics. Alhamdulillah, today is a special session, inshallah, of course, because I'm joined with Imam Mustafa Abu Rayyan once again. How are you, Shaykh?
Alhamdulillah, akhi, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm doing very good, barakallah feek.
Feek barakallah. Now, behind me, we've got an image, and it says PG, which is parental guidance, which is kind of the topic of the day, parental guidance. Now, it's kind of like a wordplay. You know, obviously this stuff you see on movies or series or whatever in terms of this thing that you're viewing in this parental guidance when you're watching it. So that in itself is something that, you know, we're going to talk about today, not watching things that have PG on it, but rather the guidance that parents are giving their children, first and foremost, and also the parents themselves needing guidance in order to guide their children.
Of course.
So my first question, inshallah ta'ala, is what are the objectives, right, for parents when they have children, when people get married, you know, because someone who's watching this, maybe they don't have children, but one day they will be married, inshallah ta'ala, and they hope to have children. What's the objective behind having children?
Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. There are plenty of reasons to have children, right? It's part and parcel of being human, and it's almost a thing that people don't think about. It's almost, everyone knows, like, okay, you're meant to, as you grow up, you're meant to get married, you're meant to have children. And it's almost in our fitra, in our nature, right, to procreate, right? You see this not only in humans, but also in all of Allah's other creation on this earth as well, right? Procreating. And but as human beings, and more specifically as Muslims, we always have higher objectives and greater aims. So we have children because it's one of those things that make people happy, of course. But as Muslims, we have children for, number one, because it is a sunnah. It is the sunnah of the prophets, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that the greatest people, the prophets, وَجَعَلْنَا لَهُمْ أَزْوَاجًا وَذُرِّيَّةً. We gave them wives and children, right? And it's something that they strove for. Now, you can have children because you want, it could be for a very selfish reason. You want, as you grow older, someone to be there for you as you were there for them when they were younger, and that kind of exchange, right? You could, but as from an Islamic perspective, the Prophet asks us to have children so that we can increase the people that believe in Allah and follow the Prophet ﷺ and do good. So there's a element of following that sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ wants as many people saved and as many people going to Jannah and as many people being upon good. And he mentioned, فَإِنِّي مُكَاثِرٌ بِكُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. I will be, the Prophet ﷺ will be happy, and he will be proud of the amount of believers of it within his ummah, right? So so an objective could be, I want to raise believers that will then raise believers, and that goes on, right? One beautiful objective of having a child is mentioned in the Quran about Prophet Zakaria. The Prophet Zakaria grows up, and Allah does not give him any children, and he becomes very old. And this, you can read this in the beginning of Surah 2, Maryam. So he says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, "Oh Allah, grant me a child. Why? يَرِثُنِي وَيَرِثُ مِنْ يَعْقُوبَ. This child will inherit me." Now we know prophets do not leave an inheritance. إِنَّ مَعْشَرَ الْأَنْبِيَاء لَا نُورَث. The Prophet said prophets are not inherited from. So why would he say that? What is he hoping for his child, who will be Yahya, to inherit? It will be the prophethood, the nubuwwah, the message, the da'wah. So an objective of having children should be continuing the beautiful message of Tawheed. There are no more prophets coming. And it is us who are carrying the mantle of La ilaha illallah and spreading the truth and justice and Tawheed and goodness and Sunnah in the world. And among your objectives should be that you are continuing that legacy through your children. by teaching them and them doing all that goodness. And then there is one that is personal to you, and that is among the things that will continue on benefiting you after you die is وَلَدٌ صَالِحٌ يَدْعُو لَهُ, a righteous child that makes dua for you, which is why the greatest thing one can do for their parents after they pass away is making dua for them. It is even better than a lot of people, they give charity on their behalf, but the Prophet ﷺ said وَلَدٌ صَالِحٌ يَدْعُو لَهُ. This is the best thing that you can do, so making dua for them. So you're going to have children that after you pass away, they will make dua for you. You're going to have children that will continue on the legacy of Islam. You want to have children because the Prophet ﷺ, this will make him happy and proud in their judgment if you raise them as believers. So there's many reasons why you should have children that are tied to your deen. And of course, dunya benefits as well. Human beings love companionship. We want to procreate and have children. It's part and parcel of life. It's in our nature. Yeah. There's plenty of reasons why one should do it.
You mentioned the whole thing about carrying the mantle of La ilaha illallah.
Nah.
And earlier you spoke to me about this, and you said, you gave me the parable example that if you look at yourself, the person that you are today,
yeah,
how many generations were there before you,
yeah,
to that person, that one person or that group,
yeah,
whoever in your family that accepted
Islam,
the message,
yes,
of Al-Islam,
yeah,
and to the point where you here standing, I'm sitting with you doing this podcast, discussing this matter, you know, and that in itself is a great objective to have in terms of when you're having children.
It's amazing because that's just having children and raising them as believers. But imagine when you teach them Quran, and then every time they pray, the reward that you get. Allah rewards you for raising them, for feeding them, for taking care of them. So there is also all this ajr and this reward that comes out of it. And not to mention the personal satisfaction and happiness, right? I mean, mashallah, you recently, Allah blessed you with a son. And just the feeling of that blessing, the happiness that gives you, right? SubhanAllah. One of the things that Allah made dear to us as humanity is having children, right? So it's a barakah and it's blessings. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and grant us many children and keep them righteous. And you see the opposite as well. When someone is tested with losing a child, how much pain they go through, it just amplifies and makes you understand how much joy children can add to your life. Right? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep them all safe.
Allahumma ameen. Allahumma ameen. Now, me and you are discussing this now, akhi, and obviously we want people to, to benefit from the discussion that we're having, and they're just sitting here watching us talking. Everything that we mentioned about having children, and the objectives behind having children and the feeding of having children for people out there who are watching, who are part of this beautiful ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What the future of this ummah are the children. And being part of this masjid, we see a lot of youth initiatives being brought into the masjid now. And even Imam Zakawullah was talking about, the importance of the youth, and the youth, we need to look after the youth. So what happened to it's becoming something? Have we lost focus, or do we need to refocus on the issue of the youth and the issue of our children?
Because we are seeing such emphasis on youth work, youth education, youth tarbiyah, that where is this energy, this focus, this coming from? Is it a problem that everyone is recognizing? I think there is an understanding, especially in the Muslim communities right now, that we cannot just be passive agents, just watching our children grow up, because you have to be actively involved. And there must be so you must have constant positive influence in their lives, whether that comes through you as a parent or through the institutions that are supporting you, such as the madrasa, the masjid, etc. Right? And I think this is we are seeing a lot of the younger people either struggling to stay upon the right path, or they are getting involved in things they're not should be getting involved in, and there's way too much of that happening. You always have people that are going through challenges, but when it's happening at such a mass scale, and so what can we do to mitigate that, or what can we do to help them come back? And there should always be a focus on the shabab. There should always be focus on the youth, because they are the mustaqbal, they are the future, and it should be they will inherit the world. We inherited the world that our parents and they left behind, and they will inherit the world that we will leave behind, and so on and so forth. And there should be an active response. There should be a responsibility upon everyone, upon parents, educators, more specifically parents, to understand what kind am I preparing my children, or are we preparing the youth for this world, and what can we do to improve that, and why is it that they're not ready to face the challenges of the world, and then those shortcomings, and often the shortcomings are in the home, are then now being tried to filled with all these other programs, right? But I personally believe that we need these supplementary programs, right? You need the madrasa teacher and the local imam, and maybe even the school or whatever the case is around you, the support network. You need it, but in the end of the day, the person that is giving tarbiyah and raising is the father and the mother.
Yeah,
that's where it starts.
No, and part of dealing with a problem is recognizing that there is a problem.
Absolutely.
So, which brings me to the next question is, what issues are children and the shabab and the youth facing as they're growing up in the world today?
Subhanallah. I mean, look, children and growing up anywhere, at any time, we're always going to face challenges. It's just part and parcel of life. But has those challenges increased? Yes. And as Muslims now, we're dealing with completely different type of challenges. Now you're growing up in a world where the most you might be in an area where being Muslim is not the most popular thing, or you might feel that your faith is something that you shouldn't be proud of, you shouldn't openly display. You might feel some inferiority. You might be going to a school where everyone else isn't Muslim. You might be living in a society, which is happening to a lot of us, and especially in the West End. This is a different type of challenge than someone that is going through, has a different set of circumstances in their life. So the people's faith are being challenged, especially Islam nowadays. Then you have all these other, before we lived in a world where religion was respected. Now we live in a world where religion, all of it, is completely disregarded. And you have this rise of not having any deen, and not adhering to any religious values. So you're faced with that and all these other anti-Islamic kind of messages. Are they prepared enough for that? And then you add to that that a lot of people that are in the West, they are like maybe second generation, and that means that there's that they're immigrant families, and that comes with its own challenges. So there's loads of challenges that they are growing up and facing and seeing, and it is our responsibility, the parents, and then also the responsibility of the community in general, to ensure that we make that journey as easy for them as possible by preparing them.
I have a theory, and I'm going to share it with you.
Okay.
Inshallah.
Should we get the tinfoil hat?
The thing is, I feel raising 4 children now.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, it's the dunya is so beloved.
Yeah.
And from our parents who moved from a different locality, a location, different part of the world, where things were not really dunya based. I'm gonna say dunya based, right? We lived in homes where there was always a drawer full of candles. If the electricity went out, you know where to find.
Put the candles on, yeah.
That's it, right? And our children will never know that, and because the dunya is so is
accessible and available.
Exactly. Not even that. How do you even go to? It's like I should have it.
Yeah.
It's not the fact that I have a roof over my head, I have food, I have this, and I have that. No, these are the things I should have. If I'm deprived of these things, let alone talking about internet and accessibility to those vices, if I should have these things, and if I don't have them, I'm being oppressed, right? So because they would took them away from that, and the dunya is like something that is I should have level of shukr as well.
So young people that are growing up in environments that's extremely comfortable.
Yeah.
And luxurious, they will struggle more understanding that concepts such as sabr and shukr, patience and gratitude. And that would come a lot easier if you lived in a state where things weren't so readily available or readily accessible. So that brings its own challenge. Yeah, I see your point, and it's
and even that, akhi, to link that straight to, if you have a problem thanking and being grateful to your parents, what's your situation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Subhanallah. May Allah make us among those that constantly thank Him. It's really is it's among those challenges, right? So the world changed. Now you have people. You're right. We have people are very materialistic now, right? They have access to all of this. This worldly these worldly luxuries, and does that have an effect on their iman? Does that have an effect on their worldview? And it's these things that, as someone is growing up, you need to prepare them. You need to raise them and mold them in a way where they do have shukr, where they do understand that the concept of struggling for your dunya, and of course, more importantly, for your deen.
But it's not even like, let's say we can say that this is our fault. Like me, myself, like you said, I've just had our son recently, yes. Right? And the love I have for him, and all my children, is that I want to give them the best of everything.
No.
Do you know what I mean? So it's coming from an innocent place.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say to viewers, with people listening out there, take your children and live in a poor place so they can learn shukr and learn gratitude. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But there's got to be a balance, right?
Yes. So, but okay, let's ask this question then. If a child grows up in luxury, does that automatically mean that they will end up being someone that is an ingrate, someone that is ungrateful in life, or someone that is... Often that happens, right? But that wouldn't happen if they had good tarbiyah. So good tarbiyah can override whatever path you are upon. So let's say there are loads of... like someone could be living in the most luxurious lifestyle, but if his parents are granting him the best tarbiyah possible, and they're teaching him patience, and they're teaching him gratitude, and they're teaching him being submissive to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and all the good values that come with that, right? Then he might be faced with different challenges, right? So someone that has everything needs to learn humility, right? And someone that has nothing needs to learn he needs to learn patience and understand that the world isn't about just the luxuries, and that there is a greater purpose. So you have different challenges, but in the end, what is the connecting line is that everyone needs tarbiyah. So whether you're someone that came from a rich background or a poor background, your parents still need to give you tarbiyah, right? So it's but that being said, the fact that the world is now, it's easier. Have you heard this quote that hard times create strong men? Yeah. And then strong men create good times, and good times create something along those lines, right? So it is that through struggle, you build
stronger.
Character and stronger. And that's true.
Yeah.
But we should also thank Allah for the blessings that Allah has given us. Tarbiyah in any case should be done, and this is the point. We need to realize, what do our children need, and then we need to give that to them. And if you can't give that to them, you need to get someone that can, whether that is ilm, knowledge, whether that is the correct Islamic values, whatever that case is. So it's important that we understand and assess your children and see what they need and provide that for them. So if someone is raising a child and they start seeing that they are not humble enough, then they need to instill that value in them. And if someone is not grateful enough, they need to instill that value in them. I think that's how it works generally.
Now, next part we want to talk about now is kind of, we recognize the situation of our children and what the society that they live in and everything. So you were mentioning to me that we should be given, advice. There should be like something to follow.
Yeah.
Something to follow when it comes to raising our children.
Yeah.
And for me, obviously, us as Muslims, there's only one way to follow, and that's the way of Muhammad sallallahu
alaihi wasallam.
So prophetic advice, prophetic tarbiyah.
Yeah.
How are we raising our children, inshallah?
I think just like we learn how to pray, how to give zakat, how to go to Hajj, and people...
How to...
Yes, we have a lot of how-to videos on our channel, don't we? So we do this. I think we should also learn how to raise our children. And actually, as a parent, you ask yourself, okay, what should I be focusing on? What should my priorities be? And what your priorities are in life will reflect on what your priorities are and how you raise your children. Right? Yeah. If your priorities in life is that you just want a good job and a stable income and this, that, or the other, then that's all what you're going to be focusing on. But again, as Muslims, we have higher goals than that. And to be able to raise your children right, you need to be right. To be able to influence them in good, you need to be good, right? No, they are a mirror of you. They are a mirror of you. They do what you do, and they look at you day in and day out. They see you, right? If you smoke or do drugs, then it's very hard for your children to not do that. If you don't pray, you don't expect them to pray, and it would be hypocritical of you. So, and if you are someone that is involved in their deen in all of its aspects, then this is something that will have a good and positive impact on your children. So the first step is you start with yourself and say, well, am I ready to be a good father or mother? And if you already are, am I a good father or mother? And what do I measure myself with? If you only measure yourself with, I feed them, I clothe them, I send them to school, right? They look very shiny and nice, and I do my job. This is what I'm supposed to do. The answer is no. That's not what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to just look at the outside, right? In fact, the biggest part of your child that you should be focused on is their heart. Is it their heart connected to Allah? Do they understand their responsibilities in this world and the world to come? Do they know why they are here? Why Allah created them? Do they understand that their biggest priority is their religion? This is what you're supposed to be doing. And outsourcing, now there's this concept that they mention is outsourcing parenting. So you're so busy with chasing the dunya, you use other means to raise your children, right? Drop them off to school, get them dropped off to madrasa, let the ustad deal with it, let the imam deal with it, and you have no active involvement in your life. Sometimes the reason is because the person doesn't feel like they're ready, which is where education comes in. Educate yourself, right? And this is why we need a lot more, workshops on, okay, how do you raise a child? And also, it's okay that if you don't know, but you need to have the right mindset. You need to have the right mindset. I just saw the other day a woman who, I think her daughter was blind, if I'm not mistaken, and she would read to her the work she was doing in university until she passed. So the mother was so involved. I think they gave her an honorary a degree or something like that. The point is that look how involved she was, right? And so involvement is key. And before your involvement is so prevalent, ask yourself, why am I so involved? What do I want out of this relationship between me and my child? What do I want out of it? I want to raise someone that understands Allah and Messenger and what to do in their life as a Muslim. And I don't care if they become the greatest heart surgeon or they work in the local supermarket. Of course, I mean, you do care. Yeah. But the point I'm trying to make is, if you had to choose between those two, you would ask yourself, okay, they work in the local supermarket, but they pray 5 times a day, and they go to Jum'ah, and they know Allah and His Messenger, and they read the Quran, or they have the best job in the world, but they don't pray at all, or they have no connection to the deen. Which one do you choose? And which one is going to make dua for you after you die? And which one, every act of worship that they do, will come to you in your grave? And which one is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is the mindset that you need to have. And to do that, you need to employ prophetic tarbiyah, which means the Prophet told us, teach them how to pray when they're 7, right? And this reminds me of a famous statement. It's attributed sometimes to the Prophet. It's not hadith. It's sometimes attributed to Umar al-Khattab, but also that's not authentic. But it's a beautiful statement nonetheless. And that is, لَاعِبْهُ سَبْعًا وَأَدِّبْهُ سَبْعًا وَصَاحِبْهُ سَبْعًا. Right? It's about your children. It says, play with them the first 7. Play with them the first 7. Right? Then it says, أَدِّبْهُ سَبْعًا. Now, discipline, educate them the next 7. So between the ages of 0 to 7, you let them play, you let them be children. And this is something even in the Quran, subhanAllah, Allah talks about a child playing. Yusuf, when his brothers, they said to her father, although they had, of course, evil intentions with their younger brother Yusuf, what did they say? Let him come with us, يرتع ويلعب. He's going to come and play, and this concept of children playing. So you let them play, and then the next 7, that's key, from 7 to 14, that age, which is 14. Why 14? Because that's when bulugh, that's when they often, maybe a year before, a year after, is when they become legal adults from an Islamic perspective, meaning they have to pray and they have to do their obligations, right?
Yeah, lunar calendar, صح?
Yeah, the lunar calendar, of course. Very, very good, right? So those years is when you educate them. You educate them about Allah, about the prayer, about their obligations from an Islamic perspective, and also educate them about the dunya. Basically, you educate them and you prepare them. And then if you do that properly, those 7, their formative years, Then صاحبه سبعا, the final 7 from the age of 14 to 21, that be their friends, right? Be their friends, because you've put in the work. But who can do that? Who can trust their 15-year-old, the 16-year-old to make the right decisions and just be there as a general guide if you've put the work in their formative years, in those years that came before, right? And you do that by first being a good example, right? And the concept of being a role model, a qudwa, is heavily emphasized in our religion, but right? And then you have the concept of course, being very loving to your children, right? And the Prophet ﷺ's example to how he was with his children, how he was with his grandchildren. You have to be a very loving, and sometimes certain characteristics don't come to you naturally. You'll find that actually. So someone, he says, I'm naturally, there's a brother the other day, he told us, like, I'm just naturally, like, I'm not very, he finds affection is a bit much. Like he said, I'm not naturally affectionate. And I find it weird. That's what he said. And it's like, there's people, Allah creates people differently, right? But then there's hadith that the concept of tahallum and ta'allum, right? That there are naturally, there are khuluq that is acquired, a character that is acquired, and they have a character that Allah embeds in you, right? Someone is naturally patient. Do you ever come across someone naturally calm, naturally patient, naturally smiling? And then you have characters that you acquire. You actually learn, you learn them. It's the whole nature versus nurture, right? So you need to nurture yourself into becoming the kind of person that will mold and raise and nurture a good child. So if you're lacking somewhere naturally, you must make up for that. So if you're someone that maybe doesn't show a lot of affection, then compensate for that. Actually try and show affection. If you're the kind of person that usually doesn't like to get involved, compensate for that. And of course, the two spouses need to complement each other and help each other, because this is a project, right? This is a project. And wallahi, it is. It's something that you have to manage your children like you would manage any project. And you need to manage your life like you would manage any project, because in the end of the day, you want to go to Jannah and you want your children to go to Jannah. And this is why you have to put the work in, wallahi. So number one is, of course, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide them and making dua for them. The dua of the parent is accepted. So make dua for your child. And remember why you're having them and those objectives. Then put in the work in yourself first, right? If you're sending a child to madrasa for years, but you can't read the Quran yourself, they're going to ask themselves, like, if you tell them all the time, read the Quran, right? Read the Quran, but they never see you opening the Mus'haf, right? These things happen, right? But why rotting your brain all day? Go and read a book, and then you sit and you put the TV on. They see that, and when they see that, someone said to me once, it's quite interesting, they say, children never do as they're told, but they do what they see. So they'll copy you, right? You tell them read, they won't read. But if they see you every day picking up a book, it will be very likely that they might do as well. So we have to keep these things in mind, especially the salah, which is so important, right? Teaching them the salah, commanding them the salah, right? Then you have, of course, accepting the qadr of Allah. Sometimes you do everything right. We never do everything right, but you know what I mean. You try and you do your best. You follow the prophetic example. You're affectionate, you teach them their deen, you spend time with them, you do all of that. But then Allah tests you with a child that maybe doesn't respond to all of this da'wah. And there's a time where you accept the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you always strive to better, because Allah taught us that sometimes you will be tested with your family. Look at Prophet Nuh alayhi salam. And one of his sons didn't accept the message, right? So, but that is a challenge and a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But most cases, if you put the work in, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like the asbab, if you put the asbab and the reasons and the means, if you put them up, then inshallah khair will come out of it.
Yeah.
Right. We need more active parenting. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy.
Ameen.
For all of us.
Ameen. Mentioning the story of Nuh alayhi salam, I heard I was on the way here to the Masjid, and something was on Unity FM, and it was a khutbah, and it was discussing this, where, because look, we mentioned about, being active parents and continuing, regardless of the situation, and regardless if you're seeing change or not, Nuh alayhi salam, he gave da'wah, for 950 odd years, and then his child, he didn't accept the message. None of us are ever going to give da'wah Allah
For that many years.
for that many years.
Of course.
The forbearance and the tolerance and the patience you need to have to be a parent is something that you also need to keep in mind. And the other thing is, when we're talking about the environment at home and being an active parent, sometimes I feel that we will have such high expectations on our children, and that leads to them, putting pressure on them, to the point where they may not reach those expectations, and we'll get angry and upset. Why they're not doing this? Why don't they do that? And with that, you need to be, that comes with patience, of course, as well. And the environment at home. I was talking to one of the trustees, and he was saying to me that the environment at home should be an environment in which a child is escaping the world to come home, instead of a child escaping their home and going to the world. Like the world is an escape for them, rather it should be the opposite, where the house is an escape from the world. And that was put things into perspective. So in terms of people who are already practicing, people who are doing everything that they are and that they should be doing, how do they kind of go about not being too strict? Do you know what I mean? Like creating an environment which is the kids like.
Look, I think it goes back to again your understanding of the deen. The deen is not strict, right? The deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is perfectly balanced, right? But sometimes it is our understanding that might not be the best, right? So we shouldn't, being a religious practicing family that wants to adhere to the deen, should not mean that the life that your children are going to live is so restricted and so strict and so full of rules to the point where they're suffocating, right? And there's plenty, alhamdulillah, there is a lot more halal than is haram, right? And in our deen there is fusha, right? There is ease, there is a enjoyment. So in fact, as Muslim parents, you need to dial that up and give them as much ease as possible, right? This is why it shouldn't be the case that if a child is memorizing the Quran, that we make it so difficult on them to the point where they dislike the Quran, right? And we need to keep an eye on them and realize, are we, now there are certain things, right? So the wajibat must be done, of course, their prayers and everything, right? But even then, there should be a sense of satisfaction and love and an enjoyment that comes out of the ibadah and the acts of worship that's being done. And the environment in which they are learning their deen should be one that is full of smiles and happiness, right? It shouldn't be the case that, oh, I gotta do this again. They should never feel that way. And wallahi, we need to keep track of that, because the moment that they start associating negative feelings with the study of the Quran, negative feelings with going to madrasa, negative feelings with listening to a lecture or whatever the case is, this is problematic. And I was reading that even when they're very young, you associate things that makes them happy with the deen. Like you give a 5-year-old ice cream and he's enjoying the ice cream, he's super happy, right? And you may tell them, this is why we should be thankful to Allah. So you make that connection early on, that we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of gratitude, right? Out of love. And you also go overboard in making the 2 Eids extremely fun for them. And also show them that our religion isn't one that's just rules and rules and rules. And that's not the case, right? That's not the case. And also, you need to sometimes look at, allow them to make mistakes. Allow your children to make mistakes because you made mistakes, right? And if you expect them to be perfect, they will not. They will not be perfect. And you will end up being disappointed, right? Because you raised the bar so high, and you will be disappointed, and they will never be able, they will try to get that smile, that I'm proud of you, out of you, and you're never doing it because you're never satisfied, and that just creates so sometimes let them win. allow them the W, right? The win, right? Wallahi, it's
Don't give them the L all the time.
don't give them the L all the time, right?
The L.
So someone comes to you and okay, well, how did you do the test? Well, I passed, but I got this mark or whatever the case is, right? Sometimes just tell them that they did a good job, right? And of course, should we push them to improve? Always. But you need to also show them that if they are failing in their dunya, that is not as big of a problem as if they will be failing in their akhirah.
On that note, you know, even celebrating things dunya based, you know.
Yeah.
Someone mentioned to me, whenever my child would learn a juz or learn a surah, even maybe, we would do something for them.
No.
You know, we'd go out for a meal or whatever,
Yeah.
to motivate them, you know, and building that love for the deen.
No.
But akhi, it's been quote unquote fruitful. Jazakallah khair.
Barakallah feek.
I know I'm just conscious of the time, inshallah. There's a lot that can be said about this topic.
Yeah.
And I hope people can take away, you know, good points from it and practical points as well, inshallah, in terms of, you know, guidance for the parents when they're raising their children, and also what guidance they need to give to their children, you know.
No, absolutely, akhi. I think, to really summarize the points that number one, we are now living in environments and in circumstances that are maybe making it more difficult, and we have a responsibility to not only protect them from the world but prepare them for it as well. And the best way to do that is through the prophetic model, and that involves us educating ourselves. What are the best way to raise our children, to teach our children, to prepare our children, to nurture our children? And we do that through number one, understanding the right objective, which is we want to raise the next generation of believers that carry the mantle of La ilaha illallah. And for them to do that, we have to be the right models. So focus on yourself, build yourself, and then also nurture them through love and affection. And there should be a healthy dose of that through following the sunnah and teaching them right from wrong, focusing on their Islamic values, prioritizing the deen over the dunya, and also understanding that, by the way, a really important point I want to make is that parents are not going to always be right. Sometimes you think you're always right, but you're not. And sometimes you should have a second look and a third look at the decisions that you're making, and also don't force your child on a path that they don't want to be on when it comes to dunya. I think a lot of times that happens, and it creates if you need to be intelligent enough and aware enough to understand that if someone is not made to be a certain type of person, you shouldn't force them. Sometimes we do that, and we just create more problems. And prioritize on what is going to. We get angry.
Yeah, you know, literally when you're speaking, all I can think of to myself as being emotionally mature, and aware of your emotions, and not let them get the best of you.
But ask yourself, what are the things that make me angry, right? And I will never forget this example. If spilled milk gets you as upset as a missed prayer, you have misunderstood the objectives of your life and the deen. A missed prayer and spilled milk, these two are not the same, right? These two are not the same. And in any case, they both need to be dealt with, but how you deal with them and having that kind of understanding, that priority, that the deen has more priority over the dunya. In the deen, there are certain things that have more priority. The salah has the most more priority, for example, after the la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasul, after tawheed. And then certain things in dunya you can let slide, you can forgive, right? There should be a healthy dose of forgiveness, a healthy dose of affection in raising your children, and following the prophetic example, and remembering that Allah may test you with your children, as you are a test to them as well. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide them all, and to guide us, and to bring us all into His mercy and Jannah.
You know, the thing you mentioned about the spilled milk is really profound, you know, because the thing that I told you earlier that my wife mentions to me is that the way that my children should go to madrasa should be better than the way that they're attending school. Like as in terms of their thobes and abayas and hijabs, they all need to be on point and ironed, you know, because they go to school with ironed uniforms, you know, and also they're always on time at school. They're never late. So why should they be late for madrasa?
These are the things that on a society, if as a Muslim community, if we don't change, right? Are our madrasas, do we regard them as important as our schools? If not, why? And we need to ask ourselves this, because the trends that we set in society as the adults is what they're going to learn from more than what we say to them, right? You can say all day long to them, the madrasa is more important, or the Quran is more important than your regular education. But if you're constantly going after them for not doing their homework, but you don't really follow up on the Quran, you're telling them that the Quran is less important, right? So this is the idea, right? So may Allah subhanahu make it easy on us.
Ameen.
Barakallah fiik, akhi al-habib.
Barakallah. I think we'll end it there, inshallah ta'ala. I hope this actual podcast, this conversation has been very beneficial to those who are watching. Remember, inshallah ta'ala, we're trying to make this a weekly thing. Inshallah, if you put in the comments what you'd like to hear from the conversation, it will always be me, inshallah, with Imam Mustafa, alhamdulillah, and sometimes we'll have special guests coming in. So until next time, I've been Muhammad Basaeed with Imam Mustafa Abu Rayyan, and this has been Beyond the Mimbar. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفر الله وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.